Hey guys, welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig. It is 9 o'clock, which means it's time for a talk magic, and I am here with a real life Sherlock Holmes, somebody who everybody on the channel has been asking me to interview, somebody who has achieved so much success throughout his career. I am, of course, talking about one of the top mentalists in the whole world, the one and only Colin Cloud. How are you doing, Colin?
Hello, sir. I am very well, thank you. Thank you to everyone who asked for me to be here. All four of you. That's much appreciated. Yes, delighted to be here.
Well, I'm so, your schedule is ridiculous. We were talking about this just before we went on air, and
Mm.
you have so much going on. I mean, I was getting tired just listening to some of the stuff you've got going on. So thank you so much for finding the
No, of
time to come
course.
on here.
No, it is. It is just yeah. I mean, and obviously, I don't know when this will go out, but you and I know that we're gearing up towards the last quarter of the year, which, as performers, is always typically the busiest anyway. So yeah, just that compounded with everything else, it's just making for a wonderfully very exciting but busy time. But no, glad we could fit this in.
Wonderful. And I want to talk about but I've got a lot of things that I want to talk about. But before we even just start on, I want to go back and start at the beginning of your career. But before we do that, I just want to point out it's really interesting that you said to me just before the camera started rolling that you're going to be busy over the next couple of weeks with virtual shows. And I know that you've really embraced virtual entertainment and you continue to embrace it now, which is really interesting because a lot of the chatter on various different magic forums is that virtual entertainment is dead and live entertainment's coming back and no one's going to want virtual shows. But I think you're proving that that's absolutely not the case, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I can't speak for anyone else. I only know, obviously what I'm up to. But yeah, I've definitely been constantly, not just currently, constantly working on ways to enhance the experience that people are investing in, so that it doesn't just feel, like one person on camera doing a bunch of things that you're watching have happen. Yeah, I've been trying to find smarter ways of using this format. I'm not saying I've found many or all of them by any means, but I'm certainly constantly pushing that, and I think that's what people are picking up on, and that's why they are having me, do more and more things. But no, I mean, at the beginning, I hated this. The idea of performing to a camera, I thought was ridiculous, and yeah, it's crazy that we're 18 months into it now, and you know, the journey, even at the virtual stuff, has gone on. The stuff that I've learned about, from cameras to the technology to the set design to writing effects for this so that the magic happens in their houses rather than on this side of the camera, like all that stuff. I mean, what a journey. I thought I was moving to Vegas to get a year off and just relax for a minute, and no, turns out it was the busiest and most productive ultimately year of my life. But no, I mean, I will say, yeah, already like September was incredibly busy. October, November are looking very busy, and you and I know what December becomes. In any level of performing is just, that is the month where we're going to be working, nonstop. Not just with the Mirage in my case, but I really believe virtual is definitely going to be here. I think though, if I'm being honest, I think this might be the last year where it's as big. I think because of the variants of obviously the disease. I think that's what's pushed people to play it safe and go back to virtual events. Certainly in America, I think the UK actually has done a much better job of getting open up again, which is why virtual in the UK might feel like it's fading out, but certainly in America with the variants and people not getting vaccinated and whatnot, I think there will be another winter of this, and that's when we'll start to see it, start to die out. Both the
Absolutely.
vaccine and not the vaccine, the disease rather, and the virtual shows.
Absolutely. I 100% completely agree with you. For those people that are watching this, Colin, that haven't heard of you, and I can't imagine there's anybody here that hasn't
No,
heard of you.
well, they can't. There can't be. Apparently, in your words, they all asked for me to be here. So, I
Oh,
mean,
yeah,
technically,
every
going by
single one
that,
of them.
I mean, yeah. So we can skip this. No, I'm joking. No, go for it. Sorry, ask.
I wanted to talk a little bit about sort of your origin story, because we know you as one, like I said in the intro, one of the top mentalists on the planet, and you have achieved so much. And we will talk about all of that, but you've done so much, you've achieved so much in so many different ways. When did it all start? When was that moment that you thought, well, I've got the bugger's bit? What was your origin story into magic and mentalism?
So magic, man, I never really liked magic, or I didn't know about mentalism when I was younger, but I was really into Sherlock Holmes. All of that genuinely true. I did get a Paul Daniels magic set when I was like, oh, 6 or 7, but my cousin Karen, she that Christmas learned all the tricks first, and then she performed them to the family. So, classic Karen move. So naturally, I hated Karen more and magic more, but that put me off it. But I always loved science and understanding how stuff worked. So I was more into like taking the TV and the toaster apart and trying to put it back together. And I loved that. And then I saw Paul McKenna on TV hypnotizing people. And I thought, wait, how can a guy just click his fingers and people go to sleep? So I wanted to understand that and read books on hypnosis when I was maybe in primary 6 or 7. So still pretty young to try and fathom this stuff. But things like, the suggestibility tests, they were all working. So I was like, wait, there is something in this. Um, and that led to me, I went to university quite young. Sorry, then I discovered mentalism and 13 Steps and the Animan books. And I'll be honest, read them and thought, this is bullshit. Like, none of this is ever going to fly in the real world. And tried it, and it did. And I was like, wait a minute, there's something in this. And started finding ways of connecting the mentalism with the Sherlock stuff and creating, small performances with that. And then I went to university when I got accepted at 15, started at 16 to study forensic investigation. And when I went there, I was like one of the youngest people in the university, but no one else knew that. So I got to kind of pretend to be a little older and kind of come out my shell. And all those guys wanted to go out every night and like, go to comedy clubs. And I'd always loved comedy. And again, much like taking apart the TV, I love dissecting comedy and understanding why was that funny and how did they construct that joke. And so yeah, going to see comedians in comedy clubs, that was when the bug really bit, the idea of taking everything that I've been coming up with and doing it on a stage. And I've always admired, like, comedy's my first love, more than anything else. Just the idea of connecting with people, not hiding behind anything. Like, I feel like so many people in magic, they focus so much on the trick, which you have to, because sometimes the methods are hard and you need to practice. But you spend so much time focusing on that when you go to perform it, the performance kind of dwindles as a result. And it's a shame because then you never really get to connect with people and let it have the impact that you want it to have. So I think I'm very lucky that I entered this realm by going into comedy first, learning how to connect with an audience without having to hide behind anything, and then add everything else in later. And that's sort of the journey slash how the different bugs bit at certain times to lead me on this path. And I think that's, if anything, that why I've been successful. I think that's why, is because I've learned to connect with people first and add the material later. And I think that's why so often we see people do tricks with the same presentation as everyone else, because they spend so long focusing on learning the trick that when it comes to present it, they go, oh, wait, I haven't really thought about what I'm going to say. And their brain just instinctively, as a survival mechanism, goes, wait, what did that person say? Oh, yeah, say that. And then that's why it jumps into that mode. Whereas my approach is the complete opposite. It's like, what do I want to say? What do I want to relay? What do I want to connect through? What's the message, the story, the joke, the point? And then when I construct that and I write that, then I find the material that suits that. And that's always been the way that I would go about it.
Okay, that's fascinating and really good advice. Was there a point, did you always have a desire to be a performer? Or was there a point where you were thinking, well, I'm going to university here, I'm doing this degree in forensic science, I think it was forensic science, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That's my gut. Well, I suppose I'm asking, did you go to university because you wanted to learn more about that to apply it to sort of a career as a performer? Or was it a case of there's a different career path that you wanted to take and that degree would take you down that career path?
No, I mean, definitely, I was the shyest, most reserved kid, like I said, at high school. It wasn't until university when I came out my shell. So I went into university thinking I'm going to be a forensic scientist. I want to be Sherlock Holmes. I want to, or, and some, had already like started looking at joining like MI5, MI6, and really going down that line with it. And or the police, and becoming, I think that was very much, a few people in my family have been police officers and they're quite high ranking, and I thought, well, that's the trajectory for me. That's what I'm going to do. Performing, I mean, I'll be honest, when I was younger, the idea of giving a talk, even in English, that you had to do once a year, that gave me nightmares for weeks on the run up to it. Like, I dreaded public speaking. Like, I really hated it. I got so nervous and anxious and, stuttery over my words, and I didn't enjoy it. I didn't look forward to it. Yeah, it was Oh, it was horrendous. So if you told me then that I'd be doing this now, I'd have laughed at you and then run away and cried, because that would have just been way too overwhelming. So no, this was never the goal. Like, I was never the outgoing, like, I never at school, like, I wasn't the guy who was like forcing the tricks on people and like, watch this and what, like, it really had to be pried out of me. Like, in true Maximilian style, like, people really had to continue asking over and over, and then when they'd asked enough times, then I'd release the miracle. That was the, but not from a place of pre-planned, just from a place of, I really don't want to show you. I'm scared. And then when I started seeing how to do it in a way that suited me and my personality, that's when I became way more comfortable with it. And I think, just to bring that full circle, the way to learn to present it is, there's two sides. There's like with virtual shows, there was the two ladders. There's a ladder of learning the production side and the ladder of learning the show side. And I think, last year we were all climbing those ladders, and they had to be done almost simultaneously, because if the show was great but the production was shit, then it was like, well, no one's going to watch it. And if the production's great and there's no show, it's like, well, no one's going to watch it. In real life, there are magic routines that are really hard to learn, but also there's presentations that you want to get really good at as well, and the stories. So I think the way to climb the ladder is to find material that's easy to begin with, even if it's not like your best stuff. Like, even learning like Invisible Deck, but learning how to present that really well. You don't need to think about the method. Like, when I'm on stage in the Mirage, or pretty much anywhere, except some TV things when they're changing things on you, not so much. But when I'm on stage in the Mirage, I've done that routine now like 1,000 times. There's a cat, just intermission, just cat intermission. They never get in this room, by the way. So anytime that door's open, they want to be in here. But the routines at the Mirage, I've done it over 1,000 times now, from West End, Broadway, Illusionist tours. I'm not thinking about the methods. I know those methods so well that's the last thing I'm thinking about. I am, as a result, and even the stories now, I know them so well. That means that I can now go to the next level, which is to be present and deliver all that stuff, but also pick up on everything else happening and incorporate all of that as well. But again, that's ladder climbing, right? That's knowing the material, it's knowing what you want to say, and then when you have them at a place, you can then be really present. And I think a lot of people put pressure on themselves to learn really hard material, go out and try and perform it, don't know how to connect yet, and as a result, don't connect, aren't present. And yeah, we see clever tricks, but people don't remember the magician. They remember, oh, the guy did the thing with the thing, and that thing happened. And cool. So I mean this with the greatest respect, but you've not connected. And the reason being is that you haven't put the time in to think about the compelling presentation as well, to really engage them. And then when you've got all of that, that's when you can be present, and that's when you have a real impact. And if I've had any success, it's because I've thankfully learned to do that with everything, or as close to that with everything that I do as possible.
Well, I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about your career, but before I do, something that you brought up there, I'd like to touch on. You talked about how you were really shy and really nervous. One thing that I hear over and over again, and I've talked about it on the channel a lot, is I hear people going, oh, the thought of performing on stage scares the hell out of me. Especially with close-up performers who are used to doing mix and mingle and performing close up. They have a desire to walk out on stage and be a stage magician or a stage mentalist. But the thought of going from a cocktail reception to walking out on stage in front of a huge audience cold scares them to death. As somebody who has conquered that fear and then some, do you have any advice on that?
So what's interesting to me is the idea of stepping out on stage now for, every night we've got like 1,000 people in that audience. And that is now so comfortable to me that if you said to me, go into that cocktail reception and do a routine for those 5 people, I would shit myself, because I'm like, that's a lot of pressure, because I really feel like those 5 people are really watching me. I feel like when I'm on stage, I have so many more opportunities to create the catalyst of sparks for domino effects, of laughter, of gasps, finding the right people for the right things. I now find that so easy that the more people I have, the easier it becomes. Some nights with Illusionist, the biggest we ever did, I think, was a stadium for 8,500 people, which seems ridiculous for people to come and experience magic, right? How do you at that level? But that's a different story we can maybe chat about later. But that was so easy for me to walk out there with a microphone and just like that, get everyone laughing immediately. And as soon as you get that first burst, you're off to the races. But the reason for me now doing stuff close up, number one, I feel like my material on stage is far superior to what I can do off stage. And I feel it's more unique and more original. And I really try and push anything that I perform now. It's very much me, definitely in presentation, ideally in composition, which is a word I heard Luke use with regards to Luke Germain, with regards to combining ideas and concepts. The composition of ideas, at the very least, is my own. So I really like to feel like, as a performer, I feel like if you're charging people money, like at the Fringe or anywhere, to see your show, there's a responsibility there to make sure that what you're presenting is yours rather than a tribute act of other people's work. I really believe this. Mainly so that we're pushing the art forward. And I feel like we're all very capable of this, right? And I just feel like, you know, maybe you don't do a new show every year then, but maybe every 2 years you do. Like watching people like Anthony Jeselnik, the American comedian, who's a very dark comedian, but his stuff's amazing and so well written. And he says, yeah, I wouldn't do a new show every year. It wouldn't be good enough. I'd do it every few years when it's ready. And when he does a new show, it's phenomenal, you know. But I feel like there's this desire to just get up on stage every year and do stuff. Morgan and West are great at it. As an example, every year it feels like they really found but they understood who they were, and you're connecting with them as characters, you know. And that's what really drove that forward. And they were brilliant at it. Ben Hart, another person who really understood who he was, and as a result it was very easy. And I just feel most magicians don't, and because of them playing the part of someone else, you know, masculine, you know, a magician's the actor playing the part of the magician. I often feel like a magician's an actor playing the part of the magician who they saw on that DVD do that thing, you know. And it's not like they're not being themselves yet. And I'm not saying this to shit on anybody. I'm saying this because I feel like until we're honest and we realize this, we can't do anything about it, you know. And I was definitely guilty of it. But I'm saying this so that people go, oh yeah, but actually maybe if I, you know, didn't do that presentation, but I could talk about this thing that I love and incorporate that. And it just makes it more authentic and people connect with you more. So on stage, I now find that very easy to just be myself. And that was the big thing, was the comfort in being myself and just trusting that that was good enough. You know, going through high school, being shy, reserved, the school I went to, there were a lot of assholes in it. I wasn't really ever picked on and bullied like consistently, but there were certainly assholes who were just assholes to everyone, and it just made high school not a very enjoyable place. I love learning, which made it even worse because then when they didn't, it was kind of like, oh, you like what, you know. So it was just, that's confusing when you're a younger kid and trying to comprehend what is the right direction and path to take here. So then going to university and realizing, oh wait, everyone here loves learning the same stuff that I love learning, so I can now be myself because we're all, you know, mutual playing ground here, mutual playing field. So yeah, I think if I were to do stuff close up, I would more just chat to people and talk and learn about them. And you know, the big thing, the reason I love mentalism is that people want to feel like they are understood. That is the primary thing, is that people want to feel like they are understood. And I just feel like I could chat to people and have a more intellectual or entertaining conversation, that for me to then put a trick in there might not live up to the standard of what it is I'd be talking to them about, is how I kind of feel now. Like, you know, the obvious example is nothing, sorry, in and of itself, Derek Delgadio's show, where I bet it was really hard for him, probably not because he's brilliant and he's surrounded by an amazing team of people, but to find material that really stood at the same level as the stuff he's talking about. The stuff that he's talking about is so important and current and real and raw, that to find material that complements that must have been like, you know, a real challenge in many ways, good and bad. But yeah, for me to do stuff close up, it would take a lot, and it would have to be, the conversation would have to naturally lead that way. And people like Andy Nyman were always great at leading conversations to the effect. I don't know if I'm good enough to guide it to where I'd want it to be, but I know that if I ever did do something close up, I would make it really about them and them being even more understood, and still tying in the Sherlock stuff. But yeah, I think, I know I didn't really answer the main question there, which was how did you come out your shell? And I think it really was just learning to be myself. And I said it with Morgan and West and Ben, is that you understand who you are. And I think when you really understand who you are and you're comfortable with that, it then doesn't really matter what you do. I mean, like Jeff Hobson, in my opinion, probably the greatest living performer of magic, him or David Williamson of magic today. And it's because they know who they are. And the tricks they're doing, I mean, Jeff Hobson, egg bag, card in mouth. I mean, egg bag, one of the oldest tricks in magic. But when Jeff Hobson does egg bag, that is an experience. That's an event that those people will never forget. You know, there's a reason why that was like the penultimate trick in every illusionist show, because that experience was so perfect and about him, his character, and how he connected with people. Like, you know, it doesn't matter that the trick's age old. No one's ever going to do it like Jeff's going to do it. And that's because he is so comfortable with himself that, yeah, everything else just falls into place. And I think that's the big thing. Most magicians haven't learned who they are yet. And it's because for the most part, I'm not saying everyone, but you know, they're watching the trick and they're just trying to emulate the person who they saw perform it. And I'm certainly, you know, guilty of when I put material out on DVD, like the old stuff with Alakazam, I did not put any of my presentations. So people have often come up to me before a show and gone, "Oh, I saw your DVDs and your, you know, your methods are really smart." Then they watch me perform and they're like, "Oh my God, like you've gotten so much better at performing." And it was like, thankfully I was on that journey, and I hope I always continue getting better at performing. But I never put my presentations out because I don't want people to just take the jokes and the stories that I've crafted. You know, I spend more time writing the jokes and the stories and the concepts than I do the tricks. I mean, the best methods, in my opinion, have already been created. And again, to go back to Luke, it's the composition of those that, you know, help layer and cancel out what it is you're actually doing. That for me, it's all about the other stuff and really then finding ways to connect with people. But step one is knowing who you are and just being true to that. Like, when I finish on stage, when Shin and I do the meet and greet, and people say to him, you know, "You are amazing," they turn to me and go, "And you're hilarious." And for a while that annoyed me because I was like, "Wait, my stuff's not as amazing. You were all gasping and freaking out." But then I'm like, "Wait, comedy was always my number one thing. So actually, that's great." And also the fact that if they are saying that, if you know, if they're finding what I'm doing hilarious, it's like, well, I'm just being myself up there, saying what I'm actually thinking, and now I've learned how to say it in a way that makes it funny. But that took time, you know, and it's hard. And I think the reason a lot of magicians don't then put the time in for that stuff is because the other side, the tricks and the methods and the mechanics, is also hard. So to then, you know, put in more time to learn how to present it in a unique way, oh my God, you know, I get it. It can be overwhelming and it is a journey, and it just depends on what you want to get out of it and how far you want to take it. Because I honestly don't believe until you are really fine-tuning both areas, that's when you really stand out. You know, that I really believe that's what's helped me stand out, is really focusing on improving not just the tricks that I'm doing, but also the way in which I'm doing them and how I'm really using them to connect with people. And yeah, when you start really hitting unique territory in both of those worlds, that's when you stand out and that's when you get noticed. And you know, that's what's led to me having all of these amazing and wonderful opportunities.
That's fantastic. That's really great. Really, really is wonderful advice. Let me ask you a question. So going back to your career, you came out of university, and obviously you mentioned how you went into university, you had no intention of being a performer. By the time you'd finished university, were you now kind of the mindset of actually, this is what I want to do? Because let's be honest, you know, you went to university when you were 16, you had the intelligence to go on and do PhDs and, you know, go and take your education to an entirely new level. But did you instead think, I want to be a performer? Because obviously early on you started doing Edinburgh Fringe, and, you know, where was your mindset coming out of doing that qualification?
So in my last year, I wasn't sure, and I went to a day event at the SECC in Glasgow for people thinking about in their last year of university, thinking about what you're planning on doing next. And there was a motivation and engagement training organization there who are leading this event for like 3,000 people, called Tree of Knowledge. Nothing religious, just the name of the company. And two guys got on stage, one called Derek Walker and the other one a guy called Gavin Oates. And when Gavin Oates started speaking, I have never laughed so hard at any comedian ever in my life. This guy, his timing, his mannerisms, his facial expressions, his stories, everything about what he was saying was hilarious. And then when he delivered the motivational, thought-provoking messages that they were delivering throughout, you know, when I say Tony Robbins type stuff, I don't mean with a cheesy nonsense, but I mean like that way of getting you to challenge the way that you think. It just all clicked into place. And I was like, wow, I have never experienced anything that's made me feel or think this way before, whilst laughing. And then not quite crying, but like certainly thinking very, you know, introspectively about who am I and what do I want? And I went up to speak to them after it. And it turned out the other guy, Derek Walker, was the owner of the company. And he'd seen me do some spots, some shows around Glasgow. And he said, we're looking for another speaker to deliver these presentations for us. Do you have any background in psychology? And it just so happened, with all the forensic psychology, which is a big part of it, is child psychology. I went for my interview. So this was still 4 months before I finished university. And they hired me, excuse me, they hired me part-time already to start writing and learning the materials that they delivered. And by the time I finished university, I was then a full team member at Tree of Knowledge. And I was there for a number of years, to the point where Gavin and I and two other people led a management buyout, and we bought the company. We took it on Dragon's Den. We raised the profile. We went from working purely in education. Now, when I say I worked in education, I mean that I was with groups of teenagers for between 3 and 6 hours a day, talking to them, delivering these. Now, when you're a teenager, if you're watching something, to hold their attention, like, that was my real training ground of performing, because I had to hold their attention for between 3 and 6 hours, but not with tricks, but with talking, with jokes, with stories, with getting them to think, and really connecting and learning to share and open up and get them to do the same. And so I did that for a number of years, and I loved it, but there was a message in there. Excuse me. I'm not going to cry. I've just got water stuck in my throat, bizarrely. But a message in there where we said, so after Dragon's Den, we ended up working with more companies like General Electric, Nike, Superdry, like major organizations all around the country. And there was a message at the end where I said, if you don't like your job, if you don't like waking up in the morning, if you hate the drive to work, if you don't like the people that you work with, leave. Leave everyone else alone and go find what you do love. Now, I didn't hate the drive to work. I didn't hate the people I worked with. None of that. But I felt there was a bit of hypocrisy in what I was saying, because while I was there during August, I'd also been doing Edinburgh Festival, and I really loved that. And I had started feeling this niggle of, wait, it needs to kind of be one or the other to really commit full time to one of these now. And I always then knew, if I stayed in the speaking world and hadn't gone and at least tried to do the other stuff, I was always going to feel like a hypocrite that I'm telling people to do this and I haven't done it myself. So I felt like I owed it to whatever path that I had to at least go try that first. And I basically handed in my notice. I sold my shares in the company and invested that in me and growing my business. And yeah, I have never looked back since. I will say it's been the fastest. Whoa, yeah, I don't know how long now, 5 or 6 years. It's just, I mean, it's gone. I'm sure for all of us, like, 2020 was a write-off. That was the fastest. But yeah, all of this, and it's so funny. Before I got married to Chloe in 2019, so just before the pandemic and we got locked down here. But I was asked to go back and speak at my university and perform at a charity night that we're having, and I realized that was 2019. I graduated in 2007, and it was 12 years since I'd been there, and I said that on stage, and I just stood for a minute, like, I think pretty much in the position I'm in right now, because my mind was blown that it's been 12 years since I was here learning, hungover, like partying, having an amazing time, and it just really showed like how quickly and fragile time is. And yeah, and I know we all know this stuff, but to have those moments where it really punches you in the gut, it's a good reminder that, you should be doing what you love always as best you can and enjoying every second of it. So yeah. It was, that was pretty crazy, but yeah, man, it's just bizarre how these things kind of come full circle in those moments. But yeah, it was that was probably my main the thing out of university. That was what I led into, and then that's the journey of, By then I had been doing the Edinburgh Festival, and I did a sketch comedy show myself with Gavin Oates, who I've mentioned as being genuinely the greatest comedian I've ever seen. And with Kevin McMahon, now Kevin Quantum, who does all the magic stuff. And the three of us together did a show called The Colour Ham, which was like a special effects comedy show, is how we labeled it. Excuse my throat. I'm in Vegas. It's very dry here. I'm Scottish. I'm not used to this. Yeah, so we did like magic, mentalism, hypnotism, and sketch comedy, all, wrapped up in this weird ball of energy, and it was amazing. And yeah, that's when I got a real taste of doing the Fringe in a big venue. And those guys had families and kids then, but I really wanted to do this full time. So then I kind of stepped away as a side project, did my own thing, still doing that, and unfortunately that kind of phased out. And I've been doing my own. Those two have gone on to do amazing solo things as well. Gavin is now a very well respected author in the world of speaking. His books, if you type in Gavin Oates, you will find a bunch of books that he's now written for adults and kids. And Kevin is doing, I think he was on Britain's Got Talent 2 years ago or 1 year ago. I forget, because time's all over the place at the moment. But so they're both doing amazing things. But yeah, my journey just now led me to as I mentioned there, Vegas.
Wow. And I want to get to that, but I mean, I find it fascinating that it was only 6 years ago that you left Tree of Knowledge, right? About
I'm
6
trying to
years ago.
think. I'm trying to think. When would that have been? Right. So university 2007. Maybe it was earlier. Maybe it was. Sorry. It will have been like 2013, 2014. So maybe 6 or
Okay, but
7
still,
years
that's
ago.
still like 8 years ago. I mean, there's magicians, and I don't want to speak badly about any magicians, but there's magicians out there that go through their entire career and they just make do, and they go by and they stay at a certain level, and that's absolutely fine. You make the decision, you know what, I'm going to sell my shares in this company. I'm going to be done with this. I'm going to focus on making a success of performing. Fast forward 6 or 7 years, you're co-headlining the Mirage in Las Vegas. Like, you are literally in the position that almost every single performer around the world would love to be in, and you've done it in a very short time frame. I mean,
Yeah, I
wow.
don't take it for granted. And bear in mind, though, I think if anything, it's testament to my belief that before I was doing this full time, I put all the work into working out who I was and the stuff I wanted to perform. And the fact that I think you need to be, if you want to win the race, you need to be driving the right car. And if you've not, if you've not tuned your car correctly or got the right components there, it's not going to be the fastest. And that's why I did put all the time in first to make sure that, I was driving the vehicle that I wanted to be driving, so that when I did decide, it's like pulling back the elastic band. The further back you pull it, the further that thing's going to launch. And, I'm not doing anything that anyone else isn't aware of. I think I've just done it in a slightly different order, where I put in, when I was younger and more reserved, I put more time into thinking about who really am I, and watching the comedy and watching comedians just bare their souls on stage every night, and that be an okay thing. And I feel like with magicians, you want to, and other people have spoken about this way better than I ever will, but they want to be the superhero. Sorry, they want to be the god, is what Taylor says, rather than the hero, and they don't want to be vulnerable, and they don't want to really. I feel like they never really learn about the magician. They don't really share or open up. And I get that in certain environments, that's never always going to be the way to approach it. I get it. When I was younger, I played noisy environments trying to do close-up mentalism, and it wasn't it wasn't where I did my best work. So I did it, and I stuck with it to learn how I could be the best version of me possible. And then, I discovered Wild Cabaret in Glasgow, which is a variety comedy club where people would come in, they would order drinks, food, and people would be coming and going all night. It was so rowdy and loud, and in Glasgow where people are drunk. And I did 25 minutes in that show every night. And that was back in 2012, 2013. And that set, those are the 4 or 5 tricks that have now grown to become the act that have taken me around the world. Because I learned when I made it bulletproof there, when I knew it worked on that stage, when I knew I could walk out to this rowdy audience and basically, excuse the reference here, but grab them all by the balls and make sure I had their attention and their focus, and deliver that material in a way that I wanted it to hit them, and walk off stage to, eventually standing ovations after 25 minutes. When I got it to that point, it was like, okay, now this stuff is ready to. So when I then got booked for corporate gigs, I felt like it was like a like a relief, like you were coming up for air. And I think by putting yourself in those environments, you really learn the extremes. And maybe they're not where you want to be performing forever, but you certainly learn different facets of your personality and how to respond, act, and behave. And it's sort of like a training ground, so that later, with these points on the map, you can then very much navigate and much more easily find who you really are by pushing yourself in every direction, and then going, right, what actually works for me.
Again, amazing advice. Can I ask you one question, Colin? When you made the decision to go full-time as a performer and make that a success, was an element of what you did putting yourself out there? Because over that period of time, we saw you on Penn and Teller Fool Us, we saw you on Britain's Got Talent, America's Got Talent, America's the Champions thing. We saw you on the Illusionists tour. You were everywhere, kind of putting yourself out as many places. Was that an element? Is there one moment in that period where you can say, well, that's the moment that kind of really helped launch you to where you are today? Or was it just constantly pushing yourself out and getting people to see who you are and what you do?
So I think everything you've just mentioned, like Penn and Teller, happened because Paul Vigil was friends with Johnny Thompson and said, you should do this show. And I was like, I don't really have anything that would fool them, but the thing that was fooling magicians at the time was the bookless test thing that I'd come up with. So I thought, well, I'll try that. And that was the first time I was on TV. And I think my goal with TV, internal philosophy is always be a little less shit than you were last time. Because I feel like when I first did Penn and Teller, I made so many mistakes. I went on there and wasn't myself. I wore like a suit thinking that's what's going to make me memorable. And it was like, that's not who I am. So that was, not authentic. And then when I did Britain's Got Talent, I will say that was when I was doing all the comedy stuff with the Colour Ham. So that's why, and part of my thinking was, what would Darren Brown never do on TV? And I'm like, Darren Brown, number one was he would never strip on TV. And I was like, shit, right, wait, if he would never do that, how can I take that and make it so like, but then I also, my thinking has had to change over the years because like, there's no, in my opinion, there is no greater performer than Darren Brown, right? I just think Darren is just a master. But I had to, over the years, shift my thinking to what wouldn't Darren do to what would Colin do, right? And that came from learning and understanding who I am. So to begin with, it was, out of sheer respect for Darren and just not wanting to be a clone of that. And, as much as both doing variations in mentalism, he's pioneered this new way of doing it, in my opinion. And he's done every routine better than anyone else ever will. And, he is just the master of certainly mentalism. But again, as a performer, I really mean it when I say of all performers, of all genres, he is just so captivating that it's like, okay, if you want to stand a chance of doing anything in this field, you better find your own way of doing it and standing out and being different. And, so that, again, further added to the idea of really discovering who I am and being authentic to me and, my real love of the comedy as well and incorporating more of that. But yeah, just that journey, I think there's no one piece. I mean, even America's Got Talent, I didn't want to do it because with the greatest respect, I was doing the West End the year that Jamie Raven came second on Britain's Got Talent. And it was interesting that, because after I did BGT, that didn't lead to anything. And I was just like, okay, there's two ways of doing this. One is that you try and get this instant shot of fame and capitalize on it from these TV shows, or I go put the hard work in Edinburgh and raise the ranks and build my profile that way. And I realized that's actually the way that's got more longevity because Britain's Got Talent is, you're into the frying pan and, into the fire type thing. It's unless you know how to use that in that moment and after, unless you've got something off the back of it ready to use that for, tell me who came third in Britain's Got Talent 2 years ago. It's like, you just, unfortunately, the rate at which they, churn this stuff out, people are going to get forgotten, unfortunately, which is a shame because a lot of these people are really talented and their stuff really unique and original. So it's pretty sad. So I came up through Edinburgh and that's when I got noticed by like the Illusionists and I chatted to them and they said, oh, we don't really want more talking acts. We've tried that and it doesn't really work for us. And I just sent them a bunch of the videos from Wild Cabaret where it was a very rowdy audience. And I sent them 2 videos and they watched them both. And they were kind of like, is this like a fluke? Do you have any more? Now, I film every show that I do. So I then sent them the YouTube link to maybe like 20 or 30 videos of the same routines with different audiences. And then they went, can we meet you in London? And then I went to London and they said, we want you in the show and we want you to host the show. Can you do that? And I'm like, yeah, of course. I'd never hosted anything in my life, but I was just like, just that confident for a minute. And, I'd done all the speaking stuff with Tree of Knowledge. So I was like, I'm used to speaking, but I'd never hosted. And then I went, yeah, sure. Who else is in the show? And they went, Andrew Basso. And I knew who that was. I'm like, oh no. And Kevin James. I'm like, oh shit. And David Williamson. And I'm just like, why me? Why not? So that was, but just, try not to let that get to me for a minute, just to try and breathe and be like, okay. But yeah, went to the West End and, Jamie got there. I'm not saying Jamie's not a great performer. Jamie is like one of the funniest people on the planet, right? Jamie Raven is just hilarious and a great performer. But I feel like with the greatest respect, he was there because he was known from Britain's Got Talent. And I felt like I was in the show because I'd worked my way up through Edinburgh. Now, again, both of us took a risk and did it our own ways. Jamie obviously has since gone on to do other things with Illusionist and other great shows because he is great, like hands down. But what I'm saying is that these shows give you that shot of the fame that does raise your profile, which is what it's intended to do. And Jamie played it perfectly. But I decided, because I in my head thought, okay, Jamie got there because of that, and I got there because of Edinburgh. I'm now in the Illusionist. I don't want to do these types of shows again. Until I came to America, and AGT came to see the show, and they were like, oh, we want you to do this. And I was like, very kind, I don't want to, but thanks. And then they contacted Simon Painter and they said, we want Colin to do it. And Simon Painter phoned me and went, we want you to do AGT. And I went, yeah, they asked, I'm okay. He went, no. We want you to do AGT. And it felt like your boss telling you you're working Sunday, where you're like, oh, I've got plans. They're like, nah, you're working Sunday. And it was like, oh, shit, okay. So I'll be honest, AGT came about and I didn't want to do it to begin with because I was kind of over it. I felt like, I've gotten to where these guys get to by doing these shows, by doing it my own way. So I was like proud of that. And I thought all I can do now is hurt that, because the prize of winning or being on an AGT or a BGT is that you get the recognition you deserve. Again, in Jamie's case, the recognition he deserves to be in that position. And I feel like I'd done it my own way. So why would I then risk? All I can do is fail here because I'm already in the illusionist, which is what that tends to lead to. And I started having chats with the creative team and I said, right, I've got this routine. Can I do this? And they were like, no, you can't do that. And I pitched something else and they were like, no. And it just felt like no after no. And I got to the point where I was just like, why am I doing this? I don't need this shit. Like, I'm already away from home and I was homesick, missing my pets, my cats. And I eventually went, okay, get me a kitten. And I remember them, it was on a call and there was silence for like 3 seconds where I can only imagine they were looking around each other going, yeah, we can do that. And then they went, how many do you need? I'm like, wait, so some of the shit I've just mentioned that would be way easier, no, but kittens are, so I was like, get me one kitten. And that then just led to the routine that I did on AGT with the cat in the box type thing. And yeah, the rest is history. After that, they were very much on my team and realized the horror stories I'd heard from like Kevin James and stuff, those days had changed. And now if you're on those shows, they respect you and they want you to do well because they want other magicians in future years to come on. And they realized if we're going to keep shitting on people, then other people aren't going to come next year. So we have to be careful. So they now really try and make you look as good as possible. And I think, I mean, I know on that show, again, my goal every time I do TV be a little less shit than the last time. I know the round of AGT that was too long, too confusing, where I lost my momentum, and that's where it hurt me. And I realized, the formula, and that was because the morning of, not just because, I try and take responsibility for everything so that I'm obviously way more in control of my life and career and trajectory. But the morning of the filming, they said, hey, can you put Mel B into the act as well? Because she and Simon have got a bit of friction right now and we want you to capitalize on it. And I said, it's going to add like 60 seconds to the full routine. It's already pretty long. And I don't mind. I would rather have 3 minutes that are amazing on that show, that are remembered, than 6 minutes that are longer, that are a bit like, meh, that will get forgotten, right? It's not for me. It's not the time on TV. It's the quality, not the quantity. And they pushed and pushed. I went, right, okay. And it just made it too long. And I know that they were trying to help and their heart was in the right place to create this moment for TV. But yeah, on reflection, that's the one thing I would have changed and just kept the original sequence. But yeah, that's what made it too contrived. And I knew at that point the momentum had like American audiences. Remember, people that watch that show are not watching it because they love mentalism. They love watching acts on TV that they don't have to think about, visual eye candy. So anything cerebral already is a big X, no pun intended, in their head. So then, to make it longer and stuff was just, all of that was going to hurt me. And that's why I knew it had to be simple, to the point, visual, different, etc., etc. And that's what stifled it. Then the next round, I had a feeling was going to be my last viewing on that series. So I just gave it everything and just made it as memorable as I could. And thankfully, off the back of that, they've seen that I'm good at writing material for that audience. They understand the processes that I go through and the research that I do. And I watch other shows at those time slots that are watched by those demographics. And I take similar things and I write around those models, and that's why they've had me back, thankfully, for Champions. Obviously, they had Shin and I together. And then last year, I think I'm one of only myself and Lindsay Sterling are the only two acts who didn't make it to the final of the series, who they brought back as a special guest, which is, wonderful to know that I'm doing something right. And my refining, constant refining of my thinking of this stuff, is paying off. So yeah, that's a long way of saying there's no one moment, but there's certainly things learned from every moment that help chisel away. If this was a block of clay, I'm constantly chiseling away at it to find whatever eventually is under there. So it's just, these moments all help me know that I'm on the right path. Sometimes when they've gone wrong, that also helps. And, I think our failures and the risks that we take, we can learn as much from them. The same when I watch, there's nothing I hate more than watching a good magic show, because when you watch it, you sit there and think, oh, I wish I'd thought of that. And, and in my head, I cross those concepts off. Like, I don't then go, I'm going to start doing that, as I know some people unfortunately do because of what we spoke about earlier. But nothing annoys me more than watching a good magic show. I mean, I love it, and it's usually friends of mine, and I'm just like, oh, that was so good. That's so frustrating, because they've raised the bar again, which is also great because we should be raising the bar. But when I watch a bad show, I learn a lot from that as well. Not to rip the shit out of it, and I've done bad shows. I know how it feels to do a bad show, right? I'm sure we've all been there. But the things that you can learn from that, from your own or someone else's, to really reflect and go, what would have made that better? How could that have been different? Like, these things are important. And the only idiot, so there's nothing wrong with taking a risk and failing. The thing I do have an issue with is people that take a risk, fail, and don't do anything about it. Like that drive home, or that, listen, the first night of every Fringe show that I do, I don't sleep that night, because after we do show one, I'm on the phone to my friend David Gerard, who has co-written and directed everything I've ever done. He lives in San Francisco, is, in my opinion, the greatest living magic performer, thinker alive, because his brain is a machine where he knows everything in magic, absorbs it, can perform it, and can just filter what's good, bad. He's also hilarious. He's the quickest ad-libbing, like real ad-libs in the moment thinker I have ever seen. So his brain is just incredible. And he and I will just sit there, and like nights at the castle, the first night on the Monday when you go do new stuff, we'll be up all night going, okay, why was that so bad? We thought it was going to do this. Why didn't it? Oh, we need to change that, switch those two. And we will rip that thing to shreds. So that's the only thing everyone should be taking risks and learning from it. And that is, I'm not saying you take a huge risk and do a full 1 hour show. Like, I've been there and it's stressful, and you need to be able to think fast and fix a lot of things. But even close up, like every night, do one thing that scares you. And the beauty of close up, and David, this is, his thing. He loves close up because his ideas on stage, he looks at every close-up group as he gets to test a stage idea 30 times in a night and refine it. So when he does it on stage, it's perfect. And this is like, I'm sure common sense, but David was the first person that pitched it to me of why close-up is so important. I still don't do close-up because I'm just not good enough. But that idea of like taking these risks and really carving away and finding unique moments and beats and reveals and just, again, ways of connecting with people that they'll never have seen before or felt before, I think is so important. And we're all capable of it. And that's why, again, if you're stressing about the mechanics of the trick, don't make it that trick that you take the risks on with the stories. Find a trick that's self-working, right? And have no shame with that, because you're using that for a greater purpose. And I think then, again, going back to those ladders, it's all about climbing them as quickly as you can. And long may we all do that.
Absolutely. Now, Colin,
I just spoke for a very long time there. I'm by the way, if I'm waffling, if you're like, this is shit, just give me like a cutthroat sign and I'll know to bail. And I always like, I know there's a lot of like resources at the moment because people have learned how to do stuff online, and I know that people spending their time to listen to anything. Like, your time is valuable. So like, Craig, on behalf of everyone who will potentially listen to this, if you feel like anything I'm saying at any point is crap, please just say, move on. Like, I have no beef with you saying that for the sanity and sake of everyone else.
See my seat here, Colin, but I'm literally sitting on the edge of it. This is absolutely fascinating. It really is. So
you say that you left for 5 minutes. You actually left the scene for 5 minutes. And no, I'm joking. No, good. As long as, again, I mean, and some of the stuff I'm saying, I'm not saying this to be harsh. Like, I'm saying this because I really believe this stuff is true, and I am, I'm the living proof of everything I'm talking about, and I believe it, and I'm saying it because I really feel like, and I really hope at some level it will benefit someone in some way. And even if one person gets something out of it, then, I obviously want everyone watching and listening to get something out of this to benefit them. Even if they disagree with something I'm saying, as long as you know why you're disagreeing with what I'm saying, great. As long as you start thinking about your opinion on these things, that's how I think we elevate the performance and the art and craft of magic, mentalism, whatever you want to label it as.
Well, I want to ask you, you've alluded several times to the Mirage and Shin Lim, and I want to quickly bring that up because that's currently where you are right now. Now, it was only 2020, I think it was February 2020, when you appeared on the Champions, America's Got Talent, the Champions with Shim, and that was a complete surprise, and no one saw that coming, and it was the both of you together. Was that designed to be a one-off? I mean, how did we get from you appearing with Shim on AGT, the Champions, to just over a year later, during a pandemic, you're now on stage together at the Mirage? headlining in Vegas?
Okay, so we had actually already opened the Mirage from the June prior. So we'd already done 8 months together. So that was really us promoting the Mirage show, which
Mm,
obviously couldn't have come at a worse time than when the world and Vegas, for the first time in its history, was about to shut down. But no, Shin and I have performed together for years. We did an international convention in London years ago. We toured New Zealand together for 4 weeks back in 2017. We did The Illusionist together on Broadway. So Shin has been aware of me for years. And when we were in New Zealand, I'll never forget. Like, I was watching him do Dream Act every night from the wings, because again I was hosting that show as well, and I had not a clue how Dream Act worked. How are these signatures jumping all over the place? I had no idea. And I think we were like 3 weeks in, and we were at lunch one day, and I went, I need to ask, how the fuck are you doing that? I think were the exact words that I used, because, excuse my language, but I was fried. I had no idea. And he went, really? And I'm like, clearly. He went, I got the idea from like watching one of your DVDs. And I was like, and in my head, I'm then rewinding going, when have I released signatures on cards? And I went, Shin, no, you're confusing me. He went, no, the dual reality stuff. And I'm like, what? He went, he went in his wallet, gave me the link to download, not to have the deck, but to download the link. And I like played it cool. And I'm like, oh, thanks. I'll watch that. I can't wait to watch that at some point, is what I said. Like, playing it cool, like, yeah, cool. You fooled me. And I couldn't have run back to my room any faster to download that link and watch how the hell he did that act. And the thinking that had gone into it was just genius. Like, it is. I say it on stage before I introduce that act. I say it's one of the greatest acts of magic ever devised, and I take like zero credit. Like, I know he mentions me. It's nothing that I came up. He maybe I put a seed in his head, and he's turned that into a freaking forest. But what is so funny though is it was from watching Dream Act inspired me adding a lot to one of the routines that I still do. So it's so funny how I've influenced him in some way. He's influenced me, and our styles. I mean, he and I could not be any more different as performers. I mean, the best example someone gave me is that I am pen to his teller, which I am honored with, right? To look at it that way. But yeah, we performed together a lot. He obviously got the residency from MGM because he won America's Got Talent twice. I mean, it's already, you're doing okay if you win it once, but when you win it twice, I mean, you've nailed it. And he very kindly, I wasn't aware of this, had told MGM he would love me to be in the show with him. And it turned out that they'd come to Broadway to watch me in the show to kind of see who I was and what I did. And I think they said to him basically, okay, we get it. We understand why you want Colin. And then he approached me and he said, hey, the team have been to see you and we would love you to be in the show. And I was like, oh, sweet. I was like, so you want me to do like 20 minutes at the start? And he was like, no, I want to go you, then me, then you, then me, then maybe like us, then you, then me, then us, like, and make it really interwoven. And the show that we were doing before the pandemic was very much a version of like some of my best routines and his interlaced. Now the show has very much become like, people know who Shin Lim is, right? So the show is very much focused on primarily telling the story of Shin's life and also how he and I came to know each other. And his journey through magic. And I'm kind of like the narrator of the show now, is the best way to describe it. But within my narration, I'm still doing like some of my best stuff. Like, I do my Q&A act. I'm talking about the fact that, everyone in this room tonight is becoming a part of Shin Lim's story. So I want to find out more about all of you, the co-stars, and that's how I then lead into then reading everyone's mind. And so every effect I've thought about, how do I tie it into this narrative so that it doesn't just feel like Shin Lim did this and this. And there's some mentalism. Like, it really does feel like it flows. And the feedback from magicians, thankfully, has been incredibly positive. I mean, obviously, it's a very different show to every other show in Vegas. Like, we're not doing illusions and stuff like that. And I think people get that when they see us on stage. I think when you see an illusion show, on some level, okay, it's amazing and the magician's great and a great performer, but maybe they didn't make that magic thing happen, which is fine and admirable, right? Because like, big things appearing on stage is hard. But I think when they watch Shin and I, they get that everything we are doing is like, it's us and our skills, and they're watching it from a different perspective. And my wife, has very kindly just delivered me a Starbucks coffee. So nailed it.
Wonderful.
Thank you. But I think, you know, when you watch a juggler, you appreciate the skill, and I feel like on some level there's more of that. People are leaving our show more, yeah, amazed at things, but more impressed by the skills that they've seen displayed, rather than amazed by the big things appearing and stuff. And I think in this day and age, with audiences being savvier and smarter, I feel like it feels like the right tone that we're hitting for the types of audience that we get. And yeah, and as a result, we must be doing something right, because I'm delighted to say we've been, you know, sold out or close to sold out pretty much every night since we reopened. And the feedback, thankfully, for the most part, has been incredible. So yeah, no complaints.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. Let me ask you one more. I'm going to wrap this up soon because I know that you have to shoot off. But I want to ask you, why did you ever? I mean, one of the other things that we know you for, as well as your incredible career, and we haven't even touched on things like Royal Variety Performance, and
you're going to talk about my hairstyles, aren't you? You're going to talk about me pioneering very interesting hairstyles. Yeah, that's why were you never a hairstylist? Yeah.
I was going to ask you, why you even why have you, and do you continue to release mentalism and projects to the magic community? I mean, you talked about your early work with Alakazam, but you've worked with Penguin, you've brought lots of projects out over the years. Let's be honest, a lot of creators that bring out tricks to sell to magicians, it's because they're wanting to make extra money or whatever it may be. You're not in that position, and yet you've still brought out some incredible, and I'm glad you have, because it is incredible. But what made you decide to go down the route of actually lecturing, creating, and publishing magic?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the beginning it was to get my name out there so people were aware of me. And certainly the fact that Jeff Hobson and Andrew Basso were reading my book at the time where Simon Painter got an email saying, "Can I be in The Illusionist?" The fact that those two could say, "Oh, we're reading his book," that helped, right? The aligning of things definitely helps, and raising awareness is great. Recently releasing stuff, I'd always planned to re-release stuff as well anyway, and the fact that I was sitting around learning how to use cameras and stuff at the beginning of the pandemic, it just seemed like the right time to, I've got time. The virtual shows were trickling in, and yeah, I just decided I've got time now. I want to put out some of this stuff, because by releasing it, I also feel like it makes me think, it pushes me to think of new stuff. So I will be honest and say anything I release was once my A material, but by the time I've released it, it's probably down to like my C material, is the truth. And that's not to say there's anything against the material. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just like I've moved on past it. So I feel like I now want to share this, put it out there. And I always love seeing what other people come back with. The people that take the concept and come back with, we did this with it. Like even just the labeling of the two hands. I knew that, like, I've always loved coin in hand. The problem is coin in hand in my head, not the problem with coin in hand, sorry, but in my head, coin in hand belongs to Darren Brown, because it was always out there. But I feel like Darren really took it and turned it into what it is today, methodologically, you know, more than anything else. But presentationally, now here's the thing: I don't think you need to stop doing coin in hand, because technically it was already published and out there. What I don't think anyone has the right to is Darren Brown's presentation, because that's his. There's no two ways about it. That the number of times I have heard people say challenger and responder in their set doing coin in hand, I'm just like, you know, and again, I'm from the comedy world where if you take someone else's material, it's game over, because that is not the done thing, right? As soon as you steal like someone else's material, that's it. Whereas in magic, I don't feel we're as strict as that as we could be, or encouraging to create original stuff as we could be. There's two ways to do, like, here's the thing. I know I've said a lot today about like being creative and original. There's two. I mean, we could either be really shitty to the people that are copying, or we could be encouraging those people to be. And I'd rather look at it positively and encourage people to create, rather than just, you know, be angry all the time, because that would just be, you know, not right. But I think by releasing stuff, it gives people permission to, I feel, creatively to think about it in new ways. And the new thing that is coming out is the totem routine with the poker chip, where Henry Harrius reached out to me and said, "Hey, we'd love to release this." And he sent me the video. And, you know, part of me in my head could have gone, well, that is the thing, one of the few things that I feel like I've really pioneered. I could be a dick and hold on to that, or I could go, do you know what? I've already released it. I've already done it on one of the biggest TV shows in the world. What else can I do with this thing? you know what? Yes, let's push the craft and art forward, and please release it. And as long as there's another component to it, as long as you have permission from that person as well, that you're allowed to release their gimmick, or your version of their gimmick, then yeah, I feel like it does help push it forward.
Mm.
Um, I also don't feel like I come up with. I think what I'm very good at now, though, is I'm also, yeah, there's sometimes, do I regret releasing stuff? Not really, because again, it's led to me having the relationships with some magicians that I have, and I'm very fortunate to have those, and I wouldn't be where I am now without doing all these things. So I don't regret anything I've done, but I feel like I am now in a place where I have pretty much released everything I want to release for a long time, because everything that I now perform, or create, I create it to perform it. Like at the moment, I'm working on, like I said, the new virtual show, and having worked in this medium now for 18 months, I'm now very aware of certain things that I don't know of anyone else that's discovered things that can be done in this way, and I'm going to hold on to that and protect it, because I do want to stand out and be different. And that's not me being greedy, but I try and put out enough to get people to think in similar ways. Like I put out the full cyber secrets package for downloads, for virtual shows that you can download, and I'm not pushing that. Like that's that was a year and a half ago, so like I'm sure most people that wanted to see it will have seen it by now. But just a way of thinking about how we can use this medium to create not just effects where the magic happens on this side of the camera, but the magic happens in the homes of people, and make the magic play bigger and make the experience play, more astonishingly than perhaps just where people were already just thinking about, oh, I'll just do invisible deck and I'll get 8 minutes out of it. Like, what? Okay, yes, fine, safe, and a great way to start so that you learn how to play this medium, like I said. But then when you're comfortable in the medium, take that effect and go, right, how can I use that to create miracles beyond just that in their houses? And that's where my thinking went, mainly because I was working with Theory 11 at the time, and they were looking at Dan White going on the Fallon show and wanted something to happen in Fallon's house without anyone being able to go there. And I was like, what could we do? And that's when my brain, I do love solving problems. Going back to, like I said, as a kid, taking things apart, putting them back together. So I love the challenge of it. And I think, sharing that, here's the thing. I would rather share, and I wish more people did this, and a lot of people do, but share the journey rather than the end result. Like most magicians are guilty of stealing the end result, and they never learn the journey that it took to get there. Like what would be way better is if magicians would teach the journey that helps get there. And you're not going to agree or like everyone's process to do that, but you'll certainly learn enough that you'll find what works for you. And then that's how you get, your own end results. So what I'm trying to do now is, if I do put stuff out, is I'm trying to share the journey so that people understand everything that went into it. So for example, the coin in hand thing, that started with the real die, and I was having 6 things shouted out, and I realized, oh, that's way too much, and it gets confusing and long and boring. 2 things, that works. But then what's funny is that like 2 years later, other people release, oh, do it with a die, and it's like, shit, I should have explained the journey and explained I've done that. Not to take anything away from that person. Like independently, they've made the leap. In my head, it's a backwards leap, and here's why. So I now more enjoy explaining the full journey to how I got to the end result. So rather than just sell a trick, I want to explain, here's why, in my opinion, it's the perfect version of this. Here's everything along the way, all the mistakes I made. By all means, play in that area of those mistakes and find your own solutions. But here's, what led to getting there. So what I enjoyed more was teaching the journey for all that stuff. And yeah, if I was going to teach anything else again, I think it'd be more focused on that aspect of it as well.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Really is. Before I wrap it up, I've got one other question. I find it fascinating that we spent well over an hour chatting. And you're, like I said at the beginning, you're one of the top mentalists in the whole of the country. And at no point have we even really spoken about mentalism. We've spoken about your career and characterization and everything. But I have to ask you one question about mentalism. Yep. I've interviewed many mentalists on this channel. Mark Spellman, Alexander Marsh, lots, probably about 10 or 15. And there's one question that seems to divide them all and gets them really passionate. And I'd love to know your thought process on this. Okay. What's your thoughts on Propless mentalism?
I mean, I feel like all the mentalism I do feels Propless to the audience. I use a shitload of billets and golf pencils. And when people come up to me at the end of the show, no one's talking about the index card and golf pencil trick. They're talking about when you read someone's mind. I think the Propless stuff was a really good. Remember, I said earlier, going to the extremes and really pushing to the extremes. So I know when you say Propless, you're talking really about Pete Turner. You're talking about like Fraser Parker, those guys who really tried to push it. I think some of it is really obvious. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's my character. Maybe I don't have the same mystique that they have. Some of it's brilliant. A lot of it's not for me. What I do consider, and I've always said to Pete, and he started saying this more and more recently as well, is that I love his stuff as being like the sprinkle that you add to the routine. Like I'm not paid to go on stage and hope that it works. Like I said, when I go on stage, the last thing I am thinking about are the methods or the actual stories. I know them, they're ingrained. I know that they're going to work. I know if they don't work, I know my backup is this. And if that backup fails, I know my second backup is it. Like that is all solid. What I will say is if it's all going really well, I might then throw in an idea. And Pete, Pete is a machine. Like Pete comes up with more ideas before breakfast than, most people will have in their lifetime. But if Pete phones me up one day and tries something, and I love Pete to death, and, I don't keep in touch with him as much as I wish I did, but when we speak for like a day. Like, no exact, we'll be on a chat for a day. And he'll just, like, I'll have one idea mentalism related, like method related, that I've been working on and refining, and I'll share that, and then he'll come back with like 80 ideas, 20 improvements on my idea. I mean, he is brilliant, but his stuff's the sprinkle. And I look at it that when everything else is going well, okay, now I might take the risk and try that thing. And if it hits, perfect. And if not, but I would never personally rely on just doing fully propless stuff. The reason being that I feel like if your other mentalism is good enough, again, go back to the character stuff, it shouldn't feel like that stuff really mattered anyway. So as a challenge, as an intellectual challenge, these guys have really pioneered some interesting stuff. Again, not all of it is for me. And again, that could be because of me personally, that I'm not capable of delivering it in a way that, or a tone or a relevance that suits. So I'm not doing it justice. So again, I take responsibility because I'm sure that if these guys are doing it, like, the way that we're seeing on the videos, then, in some way, shape or form, it's hitting. But no, I mean, I feel like the mentalism I do feels propless, even though there are props involved. I'm good at making them psychologically invisible or forgotten about, or the relevance of them is played down. And I think the way you do that is by justifying it. And I've always believed that justification equals acceptance, that when something is justified to an audience, that it doesn't become a stumbling block, in what's happening. It becomes oh, that makes sense. Yeah, cool. And it adds to the process. So I'm not big on like adding like a shitload of props for the sake of it. Like I will say that when I watched Penn and Teller's show before we reopened, I realized that every routine has a visual Polaroid moment that doesn't look like not just anything else in their show, like unlike anything else in any show. And it did make me, it sort of inspired me to come up with what the newest routine I'm doing in this show involving a fridge door. And I'll leave it there because if people see the show, I want them to see what's actually happening with the fridge door. But it got me thinking about that. Now, that's a big, massive prop, but the story that I tell about this fridge door and stuff, it becomes relevant and it's accepted. And, so it's justified. It's justified, so it's accepted as part of the narrative. And I'm not carrying around a fridge door to do walk-around events, or it's not my go-to routine in a close-up environment. But within the context of the show, it makes sense. And because it makes sense, it doesn't then deter from what's actually happening. And again, it really comes down to me interacting with them and how we engage each other. And that's what really I want people to remember. The tricks, I want them to be impressed or amazed. But more importantly, I want them to remember that we had this really phenomenal experience together that felt like on that night it was tailor-made just for them and has never happened like that before. Even if 80% of it is in my Rolodex of scripting of things that I could say at certain points, I want it to feel like to those people that this is the first time it's ever happened exactly like that. So yeah, the propless, you know what, if the trick's good enough, great. If the trick needs a prop and the trick's good enough to require the prop, I'll carry the prop. Like, because for me that's secondary, and I feel like if that's the level that your thinking stops at, you've still got so much more to think about and grow towards, which is an exciting journey. And I wish everyone luck on their finding their own paths on it.
Perfect. Absolutely brilliant. Again, amazing advice. I hope people are paying attention to everything that you're saying. Honestly, I really do. The final question, because I know you've got to go. So the final question is, what's next? And what I mean by that, if we take subsections of your career, we could say that that is the ultimate goal for any performer. Oh, would you
Mm.
be happy if you went on the Royal Variety performance? Yes. Would you be happy if you did this? Yes. Would you happy if you were headlining Vegas? Yes. Would you happy if you had all these different TV appearances? Yes. You've achieved more than most magicians could ever dream of, and you've done it in a very short period of time. Is there anything
Mm.
left on your magical bucket list that you want to hit?
When you say it like that, I feel like I'm a guest on This Is Your Life. You're going to hand me a red book, and that's basically you saying, so that's it, game over. You might as well accept it now. It's downhill from here. Um, I mean, I feel like, the thing that I'm really loving at the moment is being in one place and being home, because I think, the novelty of touring wears off very quickly. I will say, anyone watching, touring on a show like The Illusionist is the dream, but it also quickly becomes the nightmare, because you're on stage for, you get 30 minutes on stage a night, but then you've got 23 hours, 30 minutes a day to fill with, what would be real life. You're away from friends, family, pets, loved ones. And, their lives don't go on pause. So they're still moving ahead while you're off in this bubble. And then you come back and try and reintegrate. It's weird. So I'm actually loving right now being in one place doing, this show for a while. And it is allowing me at the moment time to reflect. And this is the first time really I've had a chance to look back on everything. It all happened, honestly, so fast that it's just insane. That this is the first time ever in my life I've kind of paused and gone, did that just happen? It's very surreal. So, and I'm grateful of every moment of it, but it's just like when you're exhausted in that bubble and flying backwards and forwards, when you're performing on autopilot, not that I was phoning it in, of course, but I just mean when you're really worn down because of like being exhausted and trying to write stuff that's, a bit different for everything that you're lucky enough to appear on. And you don't really get to sit in it. Yes, I was present on stage, but you don't get to sit in the experience, because as soon as you come off stage, it's then like, right, what time's my flight out at Heathrow tomorrow? Cool, right. And then da-da-da-da. And it was such a gauntlet, an amazing gauntlet that I wouldn't change for a second. But this is the first time I've been able to stop and go, right, now I've done all that. Now what do I want to do for me? And what is the perfect type of show and performance that I want to create and share with audiences now? Because I feel like Illusionist was great. That was an ensemble show. The show with Shin, I love, because it's him and I, complete creative control. We can do whatever we want, and he knows that when I turn up and I go, hey, I've got a new idea with a fridge door, he looks at me like, did I hear you right? And then he'll go, okay, like, I trust you. Like, you're not an idiot. So if you really believe in this, it's going to be great. It might take a few shows to refine, like I believe anytime you do something, you'll learn 90% of the mistakes or problems with it in performance one, and then like 10% into, and then the half-life, the curve softens out. But yeah, I'm definitely now thinking about, obviously I love, again, performing with Shin. I obviously don't know how long he would want me to be there for. I mean, we're loving it right now, and however many years that lasts for, great. But also in the back of my head, it's like, okay, what is the project that I want to do that really showcases everything I believe in and what I want to share? And I don't know what that is yet. I mean, if you were here, you would see that there are piles of notepads everywhere, because every day I'm writing constantly. I love thinking up, even if I only write one new or tweak a sentence a day on something. I feel like that's, the hours I put into it, it will all pay off eventually. But yeah, at the moment I'm just writing loads, and when the time is right, I'll then have all the pieces, like I did, 7 years ago when I wanted to launch this part of my career. I'm currently building that stockpile of ideas, and yeah, when I know what it is, I feel like I'll have the ammunition ready to, fuel that vehicle to drive me to the next destination.
Well, based on looking back at your history, whatever it is that you decide that you want to do, I think it's going to be a massive success, Colin. To be perfectly honest, I think that I think that you'll probably smash it out in the park.
Well, fingers bloody crossed. So yeah, we shall see. But no, thank you for having me, and thank you everyone for tuning in. And again, hopefully there was something in this that resonates in some way, shape, or form. And yeah, I don't know how often people talk about tricks on this, but the tricks are the easy part. Like if you want to do mentalism, go buy a Bob Cassidy book or a Richard Osterlin DVD. The best tricks are out there, right? That's like, yeah, that's the foundation, and hopefully something in everything else I've said will help encourage and inspire the next level of whatever people want to achieve.
Absolutely. Now, if people want to follow you, or can we drop some links down below? First of all, if people are in Vegas or planning on going to Vegas, because I get a bigger audience on my channel in America than I do in the UK. So if people want to check out the show, where would be the best place to get tickets?
So there are loads of like ticket discount websites. I'll be honest and say, obviously, I've never used them for my own show. But they're out there. Or just type in MGM Limitless, MGM Shin Lim, or MGM Colin Cloud, and we'll pop up, and you'll find the show Limitless. And then you can book tickets through any one of those. I know that ticket prices change constantly in this town depending on season, so like I wouldn't even know like what you should be looking for. Sorry, I probably should know that, but I've never had to go buy tickets to my own show yet. But yeah, search for Limitless in MGM, and you'll find different options and scout around. And yeah, the show. What I will say, the room is 1,300 seats. I don't feel like there's a bad seat in the house. It feels like a very intimate theater. So if you're a magician and you want to come, like obviously Shin's stuff is on a big screen, and he's paid for like the biggest of screens, like because he knows that like he needs to be seen, and he has invested a lot of money in making sure the quality of what you see is perfect. So what I'm saying is there's not a bad seat in the house. And for a lot of the stuff I do, I try and pick people from the middle further back. So, you know, not that I'm aiming to pick magicians at any point. I don't mind either way. But wherever you watch the show from, a lot of it happens in the house. The stuff on stage, you would see it on a big screen anyway. So if you're coming, don't feel like you need to get seats near the front. Like any seat, I think, is a very decent seat.
Awesome. And we talked about your products and your creations and the stuff you've been bringing out recently. Is there a website for all of that, or is it going to your favorite magic dealer?
Yeah, I mean, I have psychartist.com. I always liked that name. I always thought about branding myself as a psych artist, PSYCH, because it could be psychological artist or it could be a psychic artist. So I liked the ambiguity of the word psych there. But psych-artist.com. If you go there, you'll find the products. They're like, again, like almost 18 months old now. So the material is still relevant, and people, now that you can perform in real life again, it's never been more relevant, because only like 2 things were decent, I felt, for virtual shows. But the rest of it is real world performable stuff. So now it's like perfect time if you wanted to, or just get it from a magic dealer and support them, whatever works best for people. But type in my actual name, Colin McLeod, which is COLIN MCLEOD, or pronounced Colin McLeod by every American who tried to pronounce it that before the the aid of the name change. But yeah, Colin McLeod, that's the actual spelling, and you'll find the products everywhere.
Perfect. And can people...
When I say everywhere, I mainly mean Penguin. That's what I mean. I mean Penguin.
A lot of your stuff is Penguin, yeah. Yeah, Penguin.
Yeah, yeah. And Theory 11, again, I worked with them for a bit, and I helped them with a few projects there. So, so yeah, check out Theory 11 as well, because those guys are
back in the day,
amazing.
You got your Alakazam stuff as well.
Oh yeah, if you want to go way back and see me about 60 pounds heavier, go check out the Alakazam DVDs. Yeah.
There you go. And finally, Instagram. Can people follow you on Instagram? Do you have what's...
Yeah, I do. Just for the the performance side, at Colin Cloud. You'll see plenty of photos of backstage, my cats, and nonsense thoughts that I have throughout the day that I try and turn into mildly entertaining photos.
Lovely. That's amazing. Colin, it's been absolutely amazing. Seriously, it really has. And I can't stress enough to the people watching this man is so busy. Like, he is so busy. So genuinely finding the time to do this. And just so you know, I forgot that Colin was in Vegas. I'll tell the story very quickly. I forgot Colin was in Vegas. So he said, yeah, let's do the interview at 12 o'clock. I set the interview at 12 o'clock UK time. And there's me ringing him up going, trying to work out where you are. And it's the middle of the night. And I'm waking you up in the middle of the night. And still, you then came on the channel and did the interview. So, you know, when you would have been perfectly within your right to literally to screw off. No. So again, thank you.
No, again, I'm all for people making a mistake once, but it's what you learn from that. So as long as you never do that again, we are golden, my friend. We are all good.
Awesome stuff. Colin, thank you so much.
No, thank you, sir.
Wake up in the middle of the night again.
Yeah, it's if you turn up in person, waking me up, and that's when it's going to be really creepy. So yeah, we draw the line at phone calls. That's Yeah, we'll leave it there.
Sounds good. Guys, do me a favor, leave a comment down below so Colin can see it. Make sure you check out on social media. If you're in Vegas, go check out the show. And I will be back again soon with another video. But again, Colin, one more time, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone watching.